Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Om Shri Hanuma Bhima Madhvantarkata Shri Ramakrishna Vedavyasatmaka Lakshmi Hayaghrivaya Namaha. Namaskara of Srinivasan Pranesh to all Sajjanas. So we are going through a series of discourses under the title Vedas and Unbiased View, and we are in the 9th episode or 9th part of this series of discourse. Before going into part 9, let us have a quick recap of whatever we went through so far. So we started with a Gita shloka in our first episode, where Shri Krishna said the true words or the true jnana is only one, which has to be analyzed and known in line with the Pramāṇas, whereas the untrue words or the lies are infinite in numbers. So then we proceeded into how to know this true words or how to have true cognition or true knowledge. So we started with the Pramāṇas. We also had a question why Vedas in our very first part, which I said I will answer in the subsequent episodes. So let us see the answer for that also in this episode. And then we proceeded with the Lakshana, definition of Lakshana. Lakshana itself means definition. So we looked into definition of definition. And then we went through the Pramāṇa Samanya Lakshana. That is the common definition of Pramāṇa, which was Yathartham Pramāṇam. So Yatha means, we said, that is not exaggerated, means not over pervasive, not under pervasive, and something that is cognized as it is. That is the true cognition. And Artha means the object that is cognized or the object of knowledge. So we defined Pramāṇa as Yathartham Pramāṇam, that is the true cognition. And we also went through the doubt, Samshaya, and the categories of doubts put forth by the opponent philosophies. And we went through how Mattva philosophers said a classification under the doubt is unnecessary, and doubt always arises because of common property. And we went through erroneous cognition or the error in cognition, that is the untrue cognition. And then we went through the dream state, where we said the experience in dream is true cognition. And in part 8, we went through the memory, and we also went through that the memory is also true cognition. So now in part 9, we will be going through the Pramāṇa. We will be seeing what is Pramāṇa, what are the instruments of knowledge, all those stuff. So I'm not giving the whole Pramāṇa Paddhati. I'm not explaining everything in Pramāṇa Paddhati in detail, though we take support from the Grantha. Because in Pramāṇa Paddhati, after the memory, whether it is a true cognition or not, it further proceeds with the debate with the Mīmāṁsakas and the Nayayikas. So I have not explained all those. And Pramāṇa Paddhati is a very big work. So if we give classroom lectures, means if Pramāṇa Paddhati is taken as a course, then that needs years together for completion. So it is a very big subject, Grantha, and each subtopic in that is itself a very big subject. So I am just condensing everything and in a scattered manner. I mean, something may be from the beginning of the Grantha, something may be from the end of the Grantha. But I'm just picking up whatever is really necessary in connection with our topic, that is Vedas and unbiased view, and explaining them all in very brief, because this series of discourse is for common public, and hence I'm not interested in complicating the subject too much and leading to confusions or disinterest of people. So in part 9, let us go through what is Pramāṇa. So in the Sanskrit, so there is a root word, dhatu, which is mang mane. That is the dhatu. With it, when the suffix, the lyut pratyaya combines, then that becomes manam, which in English means correct measurement. So we have the word pramanam. In that, manam means correct measurement. So when pra is added in front, when it is prefixed, then that represents the knowledge or jnana. So the real meaning of pramanam is measurement of correct knowledge or the right knowledge. And Sri Raghavendra Tirtharu in his Tippani says, Pramaneti Pave Karanecha Lyudantam. So this is based on the Panini grammar, Panini Sutras. So I'll just explain at the surface level. I'm not going into the Panini's actual Panini Sutras at all, because I don't think anybody in the general lecture would be interested in it. So this exactly means that the true knowledge itself is pramana when it comes in the bhavartha, and in the karanartha, karana means instrument. So the instruments of knowledge, the instruments that produce this true knowledge also comes under pramana. So based on this, we can say pramana is of two types. So we already went through the general definition of pramana. So pramana means yathartham pramanam. So the true cognition is pramana. The and not more or less cognizing an object of knowledge as it is truly. That is pramana. So in pramana, there are two types. One is the kevala pramana and the other one is anupramana. So when it comes to kevala pramana, Sri Tikacharyaru says, yathartha jnanam kevala pramanam. So the yathartha jnana, the true knowledge or the true cognition, the knowledge itself is pramana. So that is called kevala pramana. And anupramana means the instruments that produce the true knowledge. So yathartha jnana sadhanam anupramanam. So whatever instruments that produce this true knowledge, those are also pramana. So there are so many debates going around this, and opponents raise some objections. Tikacharya convincingly explains them that this is what it is. I'm not going into the fine details of all those things because I don't want to make the subject too heavy and difficult to digest. So let us touch upon the areas which are very, very, very essential for the chosen topic Vedas and unbiased view, as I told already. So now, kevala pramana, anupramana. So there are two types under pramana. Kevala pramana is the true knowledge itself, and anupramana are the instruments of this true knowledge that brings the true knowledge to us. So under anupramana, we have three instruments of knowledge. One is the pratyakṣa. Pratyakṣa is nothing but the direct perception or the sensual perception. And anumāna, second one is anumāna. Anumāna means inference or reasoning. And the third one is āgama. Āgama means scriptures. In English, we say verbal testimony. But āgama means scriptures. That includes the Vedas, primarily the Vedas, and anything that does not conflict with the Vedas. So we will come to that later. Now let us get into these three classification, a brief about these three classification in this episode. So the question why Vedas will be answered at the end of that. So now coming to pratyakṣa, pratyakṣa is defined as nirdosha artha indriya sannikarsha pratyakṣa. That means nirdosha. Nirdosha means defectless. Artha means object, the object of comprehension or the object of knowledge. Indriya means senses, because this is basically sensual perception only. This is direct perception using our senses. So sannikarsha means the contact or the connection or the contact. So this is called pratyakṣa. To put it in one line, we can say contact between defectless senses and the defectless object is called pratyakṣa or direct perception. Please note down this word defectless, so which will be discussed later in detail. So whatever we see does not become direct perception. Okay. So the defectless perception, the defectless sense organs, when it contacts with the defectless object, then that is called as pratyakṣa or direct perception. For example, we see fire directly and understand that it is fire. We see pot directly, we understand that is pot. So we perceive something using our senses and get knowledge about the same. So this is direct perception. It is quite easy to understand. So when we say defectless, so that means we also have to say what are all the possible defects in perception, which I will come to that later in the subsequent episodes. So this is direct perception. This is the first step. Next comes the anumāna, that is inference or reasoning. So in Sanskrit, in Pramāṇa Paddhati, this is defined as nirdosha upapattihi anumāna. So that means upapatti, vyapti are all synonymous. So nirdosha upapattihi anumanam means defect-free reasoning. So see, in every definition, we have to clearly note that it is said defectless. The defectless word has been repeatedly used, because if there is some defect, then it will go into the erroneous cognition, right? Or may result in some doubt. That will give ayatartha jnana. So when it comes to yatartha jnana, that has to be defectless and crystal clear. So wherever we define the instruments of knowledge, we use the word defectless, which has to be noted and which will be elaborated later in the subsequent presentations. So anumāna means nirdosha upapatti anumanam. That means defect-free reasoning or defect-free inference is called anumāna. So upapatti, vyapti are all synonymous words in Sanskrit. So vyapti means pervasion. So there is always an unconditional relationship between two things where one of them cannot be existing without the other. So this pervasion or this connection is used to do the inference or reasoning. That is called, this connection is called vyapti. So say for example, let us take the smoke and fire. So wherever there is smoke, then fire is essentially present. So this is a connection between the fire and the smoke, where the smoke cannot exist without fire. So using this connection, we infer something or we do reasoning. So now let us take an example. We see smoke at a distant hill where the fire is not clearly visible. Still, by our way of reasoning or inference, we say that the fire exists. How do we say that? Because we have seen in our experience that wherever smoke existed, there fire also existed, and there was no smoke without fire. So based on this experience only, we infer something. So inference cannot be blind. So say for example, I can say just because the fig is small, it comes on a creeper, grows on a creeper. And just because pumpkin is very large, it grows on a tree. I can very well reason like this. But when we directly perceive, it is vice versa. The fig comes from tree and the pumpkin comes from creeper. And my reasoning fails here. The inference fails here. So this clearly shows if the inference have to be a valid inference, if it has to be a defectless inference, then that has to satisfy certain conditions. Only then it can be treated as valid. So those are the three conditions which qualifies the vyapti or the connection So one is, that is the three ways of realizing the universal relation. The first one is the Bhuyo Darshana, that means repeated observation. Let us take the same example, the smoke and fire. The inference is like wherever there is smoke, there is fire. And we have to give a example, that is Drishtanta Bhaga. We said Drishtanta means example. So we have to give some example for this reasoning which validates it, or which qualifies the reasoning. So I can say, similar to how we see it in the kitchen. So in the kitchen, so nowadays we use LPG gas, but in olden days they used wooden logs. So wherever we fire the wooden logs, so we can see the smoke as well. In the kitchen, they were using wood or coal, charcoal. So we can say, for example, take the kitchen. So by giving this example, we qualify our reasoning, right? And our ancestors, while they were speaking about all these pramanas, they should also have had knowledge of clean fuels, though LPG was not obviously used in those periods, because the inference is wherever you see smoke, there is fire. They didn't infer like wherever there is fire, there is smoke. In case they inferred that way, then we can say the inference is wrong, because in this modern world we see clean fuels like LPG, but they didn't do a wrong inference. They clearly said wherever there is smoke, there is fire, and the inference is not vice versa. So we have to note this. So now Bhuyo Darshana means repeated observation. So when I infer that on the distant hill where I see the smoke, I reason and I infer that there is fire, then I have to give examples and repeated similar such experiences. So we can say, in our kitchen, when I was cooking using the wooden logs, I saw smoke where there was fire. So I saw the connection between the smoke and fire, where the smoke is non-existent without the fire. So now I am seeing the smoke on the distant hill, so fire should be present there. This is the inference. And when it comes to the repeated observation, so we can give several examples, not only the kitchen. We can say when we do the fire rituals, we use some wooden logs, and there we see smoke where there is fire, and the connection between the smoke and the fire. Similarly, in the burial ground, in the cremation ground, where cremation is nowadays they do in electric device, but in olden days mostly they used to physically fire with the wooden, covering the body with the wooden logs. So one could have seen smoke where there is fire. So like this, wherever we see smoke, we have seen fire in our experience. So this is the repeated observation called Bhuyo Darshana. Means again and again seeing similar such things, based on which we put forth our reasoning and inference. The second thing is Vyabhichara Adarshana. So Vyabhichara Adarshana means the contradicting experience should not have happened. Say for example, in some place I can prove or I can show you that the smoke can exist without fire, then the inference fades. Inference will not pass. So the first condition is we should have repeated observations, similar observations in our experience. The second condition is we should not have had any contradicting experience to that. And the third condition is Upadi Abhava Nishchaya. So Upadi means that is a third party. That there should not be a presence of a third party that will affect the real connection and give us an erroneous conclusion. So if there is a third party which could show that smoke is present without fire, then we cannot confirm the inference there. So we should ensure that there is no disturbing third party in it. For example, let us say our earth has got only one moon. We all know that. So we can see with bare eyes. So when we see the moon, in case we press the eye with our finger like this and see, then we will have a feeling like two moons appear in the sky. So now there is a third party which makes us feel two moons, which is not the real true cognition. In reality, there is only one moon, but the presence of a third party made us observe two moons, which is not right. And when this upadhi is gone, when this finger is removed, then we cognize only one moon, and that is the true cognition or the real knowledge. So now the three conditions for the inference to qualify, the vyapti or the connection to qualify. Through vyapti only we can prove something via inference. And if vyapti or the connection have to be qualified, then three conditions have to be met. The first one is bhuyo darshana, the repeated experience and or repeated observation. The second one is vyabhichara adarshana, that means no observation of contradicting experiences that will disprove the inference that we are trying to make or what we are trying to prove. And the third thing is upadhi abhava nishchaya. There shouldn't be any third party involvement in this, and the cognition has to be true. The connection has to be true. So with these three conditions only, an inference can be considered qualified. So what does this say? So in the example we have seen, that is the connection between the smoke and the fire, we again had to depend on pratyakṣa. Based on our sensual perception, based on our past sensual experience, that wherever the smoke exists, there the fire is seen, we infer that just by seeing the smoke, we say that there should be fire. There is fire on the hill, though we don't see the fire directly. So again, in the Drishtanta Bhaga, in the example, we have to depend on the pratyakṣa or the direct perception. So inference is not independent. If I do independent inference, then it may result in erroneous knowledge, like the fig and the pumpkin example I gave, where when you directly perceive the fig and pumpkin, my inference fails. So next comes the āgama. There are three instruments. First one is direct perception, second one is inference, and the third one is āgama. Āgama means nirdosha shabda āgama. That means defect-free or defectless words is called āgama, which are primarily the Vedās. Vedās come from the shabda, the words, and we call it Shabda Pramāṇa as well. So anything that does not contradicting with Vedās also can be accepted as Pramāṇa. So as a package, we call it scriptures, and I will come to that later on, what are all the things that can be considered valid. However, our topic is on the Vedās and the authority of the Vedās. So defect-free words, that is the Vedās, is Pramāṇa. So now coming to the question, why Vedās? So we already went through that perception is limited to our senses. It is a sensual perception. We see something, we hear something, we smell something and understand. So where the senses are essentially involved, and it is limited to the senses. And inference that needs support. Inference is not independent. That needs support from pratyakṣa or from the Vedās, from the āgama. Now, when we come to the question, why Vedās? It is because the sensual perception is very, very, very limited. So we can perceive a pot, we can perceive a bed, we can perceive a chair. So whatever comes within the limits of our senses only can be directly perceived. And when it comes to Vedās, it gives us the knowledge of things that cannot be perceived by common people also. For example, God. We can't directly perceive God. We can, I will come to that later, but as a common man, I would say we don't perceive God. And dharma, adharma, righteousness, unrighteousness. So we know righteousness and unrighteousness exists, but we cannot directly perceive it through the senses. And similarly, the numbers just are written in paper like 1, 2, 3, 4. But in reality, we cannot perceive the numbers. You may show 2 chairs and say this is number 2. But the number 2 cannot be really perceived there. What we perceive there is only the chairs. However, the number is existent, though we cannot perceive it. So there are so many things like this which we cannot perceive. See, of course, the numbers we on direct perception of chairs, we say the number, though we directly don't perceive the numbers. But in case of God, in case of dharma, adharma, in case of swarga, naraka, the presence of heaven, hell, all those things. Karma, we can see the action, but the fruits of karma that cannot be perceived. So for all these things are beyond senses and they cannot be perceived directly. So the direct perception is of no use in such matters. An inference that is not independent, when you infer something, then you have to show an evidence, you have to show a reference that either comes from the direct perception or it comes from the scriptures or Vedas again. So in case of things which are beyond sensual perception, inference also have to take support only from Vedas, and it cannot take support from direct perception. So that way, as direct perception is limited to the senses, and senses have the very limited capacity, and there are so many things beyond our sensual perception, direct perception is not useful in certain matters, that in the matters that are beyond senses, in the objects that are beyond senses. And similarly, inference, as it is not independent, so in the matter of things that are beyond sensual perception, it cannot take support from direct perception, and it has to take support necessarily from the Vedas only. And Vedas that are eternal and that are the authority actually explains us so many philosophical things that Vedas covers everything. It covers the things that comes into our perception. Sorry. It also covers things that does not come into our sensual perception, or things that are beyond our sensual perception. And hence, we are dependent on the Vedas in so many matters. So I believe the question, why Vedas, is now answered. So in succeeding episodes, we will discuss more in detail about these things. Even in the matters of God, for example, Lakshmi is able to directly perceive God, whereas common people, they are not able to perceive God. If they are deserving candidates of liberation, they will also perceive God one day. So this is again debatable. But from a common man's perspective, from common people's perspective, those who are trying to understand the philosophy, those who are trying to understand God, they can't perceive God directly right from day one. So Vedas are the only means to know the things which are beyond sensual perception, like God, dharma, adharma, and so many other things. Then now the question may arise, like, why so much of episodes? After 8 parts, you raised a question, why Vedas in the first part, and you are answering it in the 9th part. So why so much episodes? You could have directly answered why Vedas in the very first few episodes. For this, I will answer in the next episode, because having the knowledge of perception and inference is also equally important as having the knowledge of Vedas. Though our topic is Vedas and unbiased view, still we need to know about the true cognition, erroneous cognition, perception, inference, everything. So I will cover this in detail in the next episode. Let me conclude this part 9 with this. Sarvam Shri Krishna Arpanamastu.